Welcome to the Anthro Art Podcast, a space of anthropological insight connected to real-life situations. Here we explore topics of social inequality and inclusion, sustainability, and the social self. We aim to bring a more nuanced understanding of our world and its challenges, but also inspiration and ideas on how to solve them together. We hope you enjoy it.
Room 242 and the Portraits That Do Not Speak, Unveiling Gender and Leadership in Higher Education Contexts. Opening the door to sustainability in higher education. What does gender have to do with it? The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by all UN member states at the UN Sustainable Development Summit in New York in September 2015, is a landmark in the context of sustainable development. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals, henceforth known as SDGs, aim to achieve peace and prosperity for people and the planet. As such, ending poverty and other deprivations in both developed and developing countries must go hand in hand with strategies to improve health and education, reduce inequalities, and boost economic growth, while tackling climate change and working to ensure the sustainability of oceans and forests. SDG 5 of the 2030 Agenda aims to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Despite efforts in recent years, the UN Economic and Social Council progress toward the SDGs report, published at the beginning of 2022, is compelling about the distance from the goals of the 2030 Agenda, claiming the world is not on track to achieve gender equality by 2030. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, advocates for educational institutions to play a key role in achieving the SDGs and promoting gender equality. Universities have a critical role to play achieving the SDGs. Due to their important role in knowledge creation and dissemination, research, education and outreach, universities should actively contribute to the critical discussion of the current situation, call for action, and help establish sustainable development pathways. Getting started with the SDGs in universities provides an operational guide for universities, higher education institutions, and the academic sector. The guide recognizes that through their business-as-usual activities in education, research, and operation universities already make many impact contributions to achieve the SDGs. However, to be a truly SDG-engaged university, institutions need to become champions of sustainable development and play a leading role in the implementation of SDGs. As this is a challenging task, recommendations for future actions include following a step-by-step SDG integration process that universities can take to strengthen their commitment to sustainable development. Research and higher education institutions are gendered settings in which women and men play different roles in conducting research, teaching, managing staff and structures, or implementing procedures. According to the European Institute for Gender Equality, as in many other areas of society, these institutions reproduce societal values that lead to gender bias and discrimination. In particular, women and men tend to be concentrated in certain scientific fields, horizontal segregation, while top hierarchical positions are more often occupied by men, vertical segregation. In addition, research and higher education institutions face unconscious or implicit gender bias, is often applied to the assessment and evaluation of people, preventing objective and fair judgment. Looking through the keyhole of gender in higher education institutions. Equality between men and women is a principle of citizenship enshrined in the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Gender equality is also a core value of the EU under the European treaties, in particular of the EU Gender Equality Strategy 2020-2025, which implements the commitment of the von der Leyen Commission to achieve union of equality. Despite this normative recognition and political commitment, evidence shows that barriers persist in research organizations and higher education institutions, making it difficult for women and men to have equal access to categories, resources, and working conditions. Following the publication, She Figures, the main source of comparable pan-European statistics in the state of gender equality in research and innovation, the evolution in this respect has been uneven. In terms of the graduate talent pool, the EU has almost achieved a gender parity among doctoral graduates. Yet, as far as career advancement and participation in decision-making, the data looks less encouraging, and the underrepresentation of women in senior academic and decision-making positions in the EU remains a significant problem. Indeed, when it comes to leadership positions, the proportion of women as heads of institutions in the higher education sector in 2019 stood at only 23.6%. Also, at European level in 2019, just 3 in 10 board members were women, and 1 per quarter board members were women. In addressing this important issue, higher education institutions are called to action through the development of gender equality plans, henceforth known as GEPs. GEPs are based on an actual accurate diagnosis, empirical and scientific, and the actions are designed to promote a cultural focus on equality, equity, and diversity in academia, contributing to the deconstruction of gender stereotypes and promoting a working, research, teaching, and learning environment that is inclusive and dynamic, while being responsible, fair, and supportive in protecting the rights of women and men, promoting a culture of parity and encouraging active policies that respect different and promote equality. A gender equality plan differs from a mere set of initiatives precisely because it's well thought out and based on an accurate diagnosis and an integrated action. A gender equality plan is a strategy management tool that seeks to disseminate an equality policy in the organization at all levels. Thus, the decision to develop and implement a gender equality plan is a unique opportunity to learn about and transform the structures and unequal social and institutional organizations, proposing concrete, corrective measures that will allow to present move towards a more socially just situation. As European Institute for Gender Equality points out, a GEP is a tool for structural change. However, the importance of addressing gender equality issues, the University of Évora, in Portugal, created the Office for Gender Equality in 2020. Under the responsibility of the Dean of Society and Culture, the creation of this office was accompanied by the creation of a working group, which tasks included 1. Preparing diagnosis of gender equality in situation of University of Évora, based on gender equality indicators. 2. Laying the foundations for the construction of a gender equality plan at the University of Évora. And 3. Contributing to the definition of an institutional strategy to promote gender equality at the University of Évora and allow the monitoring of the plan. Until 2020, the University of Évora had not explicitly integrated the gender perspective into its managerial mode and institutional strategy, although it was possible to identify a number of diverse practices that demonstrated a transversal concern with the issue of gender equality in everyday academic life. The elaboration of a GEP was seen as a strategy to transform and promote egalitarian and fair structures for men and women. The development of a GEP in the University of Évora closely followed international guidelines on the subject, particularly those developed by the IEGE, the Gender Equality and Academia and Research Year Tool. Accordingly, between October 2020 and October 2021, the Office of Gender Equality carried out an exhaustive and rigorous diagnosis of the gender equality situation at the University of Évora. This work was developed using a mixed methodology, i.e., combining different methods and tools to collect and analyze information, data collection and analysis of internal administrative and academic staff, disaggregated by gender, creation of a quiz aimed at the academic community to access perceptions of gender equality at the University of Évora, dissemination of an electronic self-administered questionnaire to teaching and research staff, and thematic focus groups. Room 242 and the portraits that do not speak. As mentioned above, the focus groups were used to collect data on experiences and perceptions towards gender at the university. Focus groups are thematic discussion groups that bring together a small number of people around a set of questions related to the topic under study. The purpose of conducting focus groups was twofold: to deepen the ongoing diagnosis of the situation of gender equality in University of Évora, and to provide guidance for the construction of a GEP. A total of 5 focus groups were held over the course of a week in July 2021. The session brought together teachers and researchers on Monday and Tuesday, non-teaching and non-research staff on Wednesday, students on Thursday, and top university managers on Friday. All sessions took place in the same room, a horizontal room in the main university building, with seats arranged around a large conference table and equipped with an audio and video recording system. In addition, observational notes were taken by the observer and a map of the room, a floor plan, was drawn up, making it possible for each focus group to point out the disposition of the participants and the aspects considered relevant to the interaction developed, both in terms of the sequence of interventions and in terms of forms and content of the same intervention. The physical space where the focus group took place, room 242 do Colégio do Espírito Santo, is a type of room that can be found in replicas in universities around the world. On its walls is a portrait gallery of the university's former rectors, 5 men and 1 woman. When participating in the focus group, the characteristics of this room often trigger the identification of a gender issue that went beyond the obvious. The awareness that the difference in number of mandates held by men and women as rectors, visible by the number of men portrayed, 5, and only 1 woman portrayed, was highlighted as a sign of something that needs to be discussed and a reason that needs to be understood. Feeling challenged by the paintings around, one of the participants in the focus group, with the teachers and researchers, drew attention to the numerical imbalance between men and women in positions of rector. In addition, this participant took the opportunity to question whether the appointment of a woman as rector really meant progress in terms of gender equality. The speaker reflected on the fact that despite this presence of the female rector, most of the rectors depicted in the room were men. This raises the question of whether the promotion of a woman to such a position really represents significant progress or whether it is mere symbolic, suggesting a continuity of male dominance, with a female portrait potentially seen as an exception rather than the evidence of real change, and that needs more to be done to achieve true gender equality. We have 1 woman rector, and I don't know how many men here, referring to the portraits in the room where the focus group takes place. Is this a sign of something? Did the promotion, for example, of a women rector really meant a step forward? Another participant in the focus group session with the students observed the gender representation on the wall and the difference between the portrayal of female rector in university. The participant notes that the university was one of the few in Portugal with a female rector and points out that her portrait stands out in a room full of portraits with male rectors. The speaker highlights the differences in the way she is portrayed, such as a lighter black background, frame, and facial expressions, and suggests that these differences may reflect broader narratives or perceptions about gender. This suggests a discussion about how women in leadership roles are portrayed and perceived differently from their male counterparts. We are a university that's one of the few Portuguese universities that has a woman as rector. If you look here in this room, she is only one portrait. And just by looking at this painting, we can even see her painting, like the way she is painted, is different from the other rectors. As she is painted with a light background, our frame is lighter, our facial expression is different from the other deans. But okay, that's a narrative we can discuss. The 2 excerpts here highlight the silent but powerful message that visual representations of leadership can convey, particularly in the concepts of gender. In the first excerpt, the speaker questions whether the presence of a single female rector among many male rectors really represents progress towards gender equality. Here, the silent nature of the portraits, that their mere presence or absence speaks volumes about historical gender imbalances. The difference highlighted in the second excerpt may reflect underlying prejudices or different expectations of women in leadership positions, suggesting that even when women do appear in these portraits, the way they are visually represented may reinforce or challenge traditional gender roles. Taken together, these quotes suggest that portraits in institutional settings are not simply neutral representations, but carry implicit message about power, gender, and progress. While the images themselves are silent, they convey powerful narratives about who holds power, who is remembered, and how they are perceived. In this case, the rector's portraits reflect and perhaps perpetuate gender dynamics within the university, raising questions about the true extent of gender equality. Keeping the door open. Gender equality plans as instruments for sustainability. The GEP of the University of Évora was developed jointly by the technical team and is based on an adaptation of the 5W2H methodology, which focus on the key questions that need to be asked when answered in order to plan effectively and efficiently. Who, what, where, when, why, how, and how much. In accordance to this methodology, and taking into account the diagnosis made and the objectives set, 8 areas of intervention were considered, of which 3 were horizontal and 5 specific. The cross-cutting areas were awareness raising, training, and capacity building, organizational culture, communication and language, and follow-up and monitoring. The thematic areas were work-study balance, personal and family life, leadership and decision-making, recruitment, selection, career and academic development, integrating the gender dimension in research and teaching, and action against discrimination and gender-based violence, including sexual harassment. Having these areas as background, 8 general objectives, 30 specific objectives, and 40 actions, concrete activities in measurable form, were defined, including target group, implementation period, indicators, and responsible persons. As mentioned above, GEPs are important tools for research organizations and higher education institutions to demonstrate their commitment to promoting, strengthening, and implementing gender equality within their environments. However, GEPs cannot remain closed within institutions. They need to reach out beyond the doors and walls of a wider society. To illustrate this, the University of Évra's Equality Plan proposes a medium-term action plan that includes measurements aimed at both academic community and society at large, specifically in the thematic area of awareness, training, and capacity building. Objective 1 aims to contribute to the elimination of all forms of gender discrimination and the promotion of gender equality through awareness, training, and capacity building. In this context, specific Objective 4 is to contribute, through scientific knowledge, to inform reflection and debate with a view to raising awareness, eliminating discrimination based on sex, and defining solutions and policies that take into account the gender dimension. In pursuing this objective, Action 4 provides for cooperation with the national, regional, and local authorities, NGOs, civil societies, and the local communities in the reflection, debate, and definition of solutions and policies, including the production of scientific knowledge and gender issues. Taking into account to achieve SDG 5 means going beyond the obvious and immediate. Just as a portrait in room 2242 doesn't speak but conveys important messages, there are many silences and invisibilities around gender issues that prevent the balanced and fair participation of men and women in the context of the research organizations and higher education institutions. It is only by overcoming these silences and invisibilities that GEP can truly be instruments of sustainable development, not only in the present, but especially in the future.